afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to All About Sports. Today we discuss another Houston Texans trade that raised some eyebrows as they traded a 2020 second-round pick for LA Rams wide receiver Brandin Cooks in a 2022 fourth-round pick. I'm your host, Luca Vitale, and I'm back again with Ethan and Matt. And Matt, I'm going to start with you this time. For the Brandin Cooks trade, what grade do you give the Texans and what grade do you give the Rams?
Let's start with Houston on this one because this should be more entertaining. I don't know if F- is a grade, but I honestly think this might be the kind of grade to give the Texans on this one. Because if it wasn't for a second-round pick, I guess I'd be okay with that. But you're literally trading your second-round pick that you got for the DeAndre Hopkins trade for Brandin Cooks. So you essentially just traded DeAndre Hopkins for Brandin Cooks. Somebody should really figure out what the hell is going wrong in Houston, and Bill O'Brien should be immediately fired, even though he can't fire himself. I desperately think they need a change in Houston. We said it last week. It's just gotten worse. Who knows? Maybe this week they'll try and trade for Odell Beckham Jr. As that whole rumor swirls around. If that happens, just game over. But Bill O'Brien really needs to step down. This team is only getting worse with his horrendous general managing skills. Leaving the coaching part out of it, just general manager, oh my God, the way he's running that position is horrific.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree with you, and I'm going to say this right here. Just imagine sitting at home, big old Bill O'Brien with his great double chin that is, not going to lie, is one of the greatest things. He's sitting here just like this, like all of us, has way too much time on his hands, just munching on his food like it's no other thing. But the thing is, he doesn't realize that, yes, he has power, but his decisions are beyond him, okay? Let me swallow this real quick. Too hard to swallow, just like all the decisions he's making. But Bill O'Brien is just on something. Whatever. I know I said this last time we talked about this, and last time. Whatever he is on, or I would like to be on whatever he is on, because whatever logic is going through his mind is just baffling. The stuff that he's doing, just giving away players like it's nothing. I pulled up the stat. He got rid of DeAndre Hopkins, which last year Hopkins was second in targets, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. And because all he wanted was more money. And to replace him, they decided to get rid of old Randall Cobb, who's useless, and he's old, and he's been in the league for too long. He's a slot receiver that's way smaller than him, can't do anything. And instead they say, oh, Randall Cobb is going to be good. We're also going to bring back Cooks, who Cooks has been traded from 4 different teams. The only thing he's known for is getting knocked out in the Super Bowl, completely blacked out after he gets destroyed. I mean, he's got knocked out more times than he's won Super Bowls. He's got knocked out 2 times in the playoffs.
5 concussions. 5 concussions.
Yeah. You tell me that's a good replacement for the best wide receiver in the league? And then Cooks, as I was showing the stats before, Cooks is 19th in targets, 11th in receiving yards, and 12th in receiving touchdowns. That is not a replacement. That is just a minor little Band-Aid on top of like the gigantic wound that he has, that he's been destroying this entire franchise. You could call this a dictatorship. I mean, eating this banana, he does not give a flying finger licking, I can't say the word because we got to stay demonetized. He doesn't care, but apparently to him, it's a good idea. I mean, he's just wasting Deshaun Watson's career. It's just unbelievable to me, but this is Bill O'Brien in a nutshell.
Oh my God, I'm not gonna lie. I loved listening to that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sit here and say I didn't. I liked that. But yeah, Bill O'Brien needs to seriously look himself in the mirror and saying, am I the king or am I a GM? Think about it. All right, so you guys talked about the Texans. Good. We'll talk about the Rams after I'm done speaking. But I'm going to say this. Another disaster for the Texans. And for the Rams, this was just an admission of failure. So I'll talk about that when we talk about the Rams. But for the Texans, I give them a D on this. Why? Well, because they did not solve their self-created problem by trading for Brandin Cooks. Simple as that. Now, I understand why the Rams did it, which we'll get into. But you need to take in consideration here, the Texans literally just traded away their second-round pick for Brandin Cooks. First of all, this year's draft is very deep in wide receiver. So why didn't you just get a wide receiver? And you also just traded away a pick that could have helped you for the future, let alone just this year. But you need to realize in Brandin Cooks, concussions. They are a serious concern for his long-term future. He suffered 2 brain injuries in 25 days last season, and he has 5 known concussions across his 6 pro seasons, including the one that knocked him out of the Super Bowl, like Ethan just mentioned. So I don't understand why they even thought of this. I mean, yeah, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. When he's healthy, he ranked 4 1,000-yard seasons with 3 different teams from 2015 to 2018. We get that. He's pretty productive when he's on the field. But giving up that second-round pick, it just doesn't make much sense to me. What makes it even worse, just let alone giving up a second-round pick, is how much money you need to invest on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, let's think about this for a second. They gave Randall Cobb a 3-year, $27 million deal with $18 million guaranteed from Houston. Okay, based on the rest of the market, the last time I checked, Randall Cobb's value is realistically around $5 million. Not 27, not 18, $5 million. And get a load of this too. The Texans will pay Cobb and Cooks $38.7 million over the next 2 seasons, which is ironic because Hopkins reportedly wanted a contract extension worth between $18 million and $20 million per season. You want to explain that to me, Billy O'Brien? Because I don't understand.
Here's the biggest problem with this, real quick, is the fact that the Texans essentially gave up their future and got back 2 washed-up receivers. Like, I don't understand.
None of us.
That's just the one. That's the one part that blows my mind.
It's because he was very bored at home.
Yeah.
Man is very good.
So now that we ripped on the Texans, tell me about the Rams. What grade do you give them?
I honestly think the Rams. Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead, Ethan.
All right, for the Rams. I mean, Rams overall, I think it's an all right deal. I mean, the Rams, in my opinion, are turning into they're getting into the same situation that these Texans. They're reaching that what the heck are you doing kind of a level. I mean, they got rid of their star running back Todd Gurley for a few picks. Yes, he was injured, and yes, he wasn't the same as he was in the prime. But getting rid of him is a big part of that offense, in the Rams' offense, and that's going to put more pressure on Jared Goff. And we know Jared Goff is not very good under pressure. And that also leads that they're losing another wide receiver for their deep threats. They still have Cook, they still have Robert Wood, and then they have Reynolds, the guy who replaced Cook when he was injured. I think he's going to replace Cooks once he's gone. But they have those 3. But besides that, with how injury prone these 3 wide receivers have been, what's going to happen if one of them gets injured again? They don't have a replacement this time, and that's why this offense is going to definitely take a huge plummet because they lost Todd Gurley, they lost Cooks. Who else are they going to lose? Because these assets are huge. And to this Rams team that was able to make the Super Bowl 2 years ago, they are not looking like a potential threat. Yes, the NFC West is going to be extremely stacked this year too, which could lead to a downfall in this Rams team because their entire team was built. They were all veterans, and last year was supposed to be the year they won it, and they didn't even make the playoffs, I don't think. So the decisions that they're making were very risky. They were high risk, high reward, and they turned out to be bad, and that risk was too high for them because they're definitely struggling. That's why as getting rid of Cooks, giving away more money. Yes, the Rams, despite getting rid of Cooks, still have to eat up $21.8 million in dead money. They still have to pay that much money. That's going to be going to nobody but to Cooks' bank account. So that's not going to be good for them at all. Yes, they got rid of Cooks, and yes, they got rid of a few more $1 million they would have had to pay him. But I think it's a lot worse. It's not one of the better deals. I think, yes, the Texans got an F- or even a G for their grade. But I think I have to give them at least the Rams at least like a C or even a D, like a D plus. I'd give them for this grade. They got rid of Cooks, but for a second round pick, a star running back you paid $5 million, put on a 5-year like $80 or $65 million deal that you're paying him a bunch of money, and now you're going to be just getting a second round pick back. That's it. It's not really much, and that's why I don't think it was a very good grade.
All right, I actually completely disagree. I think this was a good trade for the Rams, because when you look at what DeAndre Hopkins originally got traded for, the Rams were, I think, looking for a third or a fourth round pick in return for Brandin Cooks, and they were able to get a second round pick out of it. They have to be pleased with that. They still get a second round pick in a loaded wide receiver draft class. They can take a receiver with that pick and develop him from the bottom up and see if they can create another star next to Cooper Kupp and their new rising tight end in Gerald Everett. I think that this was the perfect move for the Rams. They needed to admit their failures, which was a great word of choice by Luca earlier. Admit that this experiment failed in a sense, and they had to try and go in a different direction with it. They did the right thing in trading Cooks, and they got an even better return than I thought they were going to get. I give them a B+.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong on what the Rams are receiving. They got a very good deal out of this. I'm not going to lie. The reason I'm saying it's a mission of failure for the Rams is because of the GM, Les Snead. He's the one that really failed. And this is why I'm giving the Rams a C in this trade. It's not because they got rid of Brandin Cooks and they got a second-round pick. That's not why. It's simply because of Les Snead, the GM. Reason for that being, it's because it's the end to yet another disaster contract extension for him. It's simple as that. They're paying, let's see, I think Ethan just mentioned it.
21.8.
Yeah, so yeah, you did do that. So not only do they have that for Brandin Cooks, but they have $33 million altogether with Cooks and Gurley in dead money. So that's not good. That's a whole failure on his part. But the reason this is just a good, just bad for Les Snead is because he did a horrible job in extending these contracts. I mean, you should have thought about this. I mean, yeah, you made the Super Bowl in 2018. I get that. But you paid way too much. Way too much. Now, I get they're in a desperate cap situation, and they're down their first-round picks in this year and next year after the Jalen Ramsey trade, but you kind of failed miserably doing those contract extensions. They still got Higbee, Gerald Everett, Cooper Kupp, and like you said, I feel like they're going to succeed with those guys. But on the field, I feel like it's a good trade, but manager-wise, awful.
Yeah, I mean, I see that's why I'm trying to get Matthew to understand is that this was not one of the better trades because they are in huge money crisis. They don't have money to pay all these players. And what happens next year when they're still playing all these players, all this money, they're not going to be able to get the signings. They have a hole in the running back right now, the whole situation. And this team is falling at the wrong time because their entire rest of their division is on their way up. So falling right now for them is probably the worst possible thing that can happen. Yes, maybe another draft pick along with this second-round draft pick. And I do agree with your wide receiver part. Yes, they can draft another wide receiver, but does drafting another wide receiver fix the void of that running back, fix the void of all the money that they can't really spend on anyone else because they're paying everyone way too much money. And they're also a very old team. Their defense-wise, they're a very old team. And they also got rid of a ton of assets. They got rid of Littleton. Their entire linebacker core is gone. They started trading. They're as you said, admitting failure. They're attempting to be. I wouldn't say a rebuild, but they're getting rid of all their star players, hopefully for draft picks to get more younger players to fix in to make this a younger team.
They're trying to retool a little bit. I wouldn't say tank, retool a little bit. You know?
Yeah, they're trying to retool their whole situation because they have star players, yes. But they're just missing that last little bit of oomph for that last asset that they need to move on to the next step because they did make it to the playoffs, but they lost all those, or they made it to the Super Bowl, but they did lose a ton of those assets, and they took the risk with Jalen Ramsey, hoping to see if that experiment will work out. But with all these how much money he's just throwing around this GM, how he's just throwing money at anybody and everybody, that's most of the time it leads to recipes for disaster, and that's why this is not a good deal for either team. I mean, yes, they got some wide receivers, and yes, they got this, but overall, from a logic perspective, this was not a good idea.
You said exactly what I was going to say, a lose-lose situation. I don't think this trade boosts either team. In fact, I actually am starting to think that this trade doesn't benefit anybody. But the Rams still get rid of a guy you could see was falling in the rotation and the production levels for this team. So they trade him away before his value decreases even further. But at the same time, they now have a giant money crisis. Whereas for the Texans, they still cannot solve the problem that they made for themselves by trading DeAndre Hopkins in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Texans will be in the basement for a while. How about that? That's a good way.
We'll forget about them. They'll be back in a few years.
That's
Maybe.
just the thing that gets me about this trade. It's just that what the GM did, Les Snead, like I said, it's the whole financial crisis that they put themselves into after the Super Bowl. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a bad deal, really. It's just the money aspect of it. Otherwise, why not? All right, everyone. Thanks for watching another episode of All About Sports, and we'll see you later.